That's me. I've got to silence that.
We're now live.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We'll start with apologies for absence, please.
None received, Chair.
Of course, I should have said, because I've counted and we're all here. That's amazing. Well done. So to approve the minutes as a correct record, the minutes of the last meeting. Has everybody had a look and agree that they're okay? Thank you.
I think we've got a second.
Oh, Lordy. Oh, I propose that we approve those. Tina Mackenzie, Councillor Mackenzie Boyle will second. Thank you. Thank you very much. Confused me. So, declarations of interest. Members are asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary or affected interests in respect of any matter to be considered at this meeting. Is there anybody here who has any disclosable interest at all? Thank you. Have there been any urgent items of business?
No, not notified, Chair.
Thank you. And so excuse me, £20 to the Mayor's charity. I did ask you.
No, it wasn't my fault. If I told you where that was coming from, I would say Downing Street, you'd laugh. And it's true.
Well, they still have to be silenced. I'm sorry.
I was doing fine.
Okay. That sounds good. Do it again. Okay. So the first application we have is the Bracknell Town Football Club. This has come back with a slightly different design. Would you like to introduce us to it?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just waiting for the presentation to appear. Got a lag. No. Sorry, there seems to be a bit of a delay.
I'll try coming out and going back in, see if that works.
Sorry, we always do have a bit of trouble with this.
It worked earlier.
Exit the meeting. Try the off and on again. Does anyone else have it they can share? Sometimes it works on a different laptop. So.
It's in committee. 5 minutes ago it was working. Thank you. It's a good start. Thank you,
Well
Chair.
done, thank you.
This is an outline application with matters of access, appearance, layout and scale to be determined. Landscape is reserved to be considered through a reserved matters application. The application proposes 2 apartment blocks with a total of 64 apartments and 24 dwelling houses. Building A is 4.5 storeys in height, with Building B 3.5 storeys in height. Houses are 2 and 3 storeys in height. The application is being considered by the Planning Committee because more than 3 objections have been received. I'll show you here a layout. Of course, there is a delay. Layout for a previous application. Planning permission was granted subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement in 2022 for 105 apartments to be provided in 3 buildings. Hasn't changed yet. And the site is an allocated site in the site allocations local plan, which forms part of the development plan following the adoption of the Bracknell Forest Local Plan 2024. Policy SA2 of the site allocations local plan proposed an allocation of 102 units. Around the site there are 2, 2.5 and 3-storey houses and apartments in Robinsgate and Largest Lane and 3-storey apartments in Mount Pleasant and Mount Lane, and these are located to the west and the north of the site, the larger apartment blocks. Access to the site is from Largest Lane, with parking for apartments provided between the 2 buildings. A total of 81 parking spaces will serve the apartments, and 3 of these spaces will be car club spaces, where cars can be hired to residents. Each car club space is the equivalent of 9 parking spaces, as they serve a greater number of residents, using the service given the equivalent of, they serve a greater number of residents using the service, and they give the equivalent of 105 parking spaces in total for the apartments. Parking is provided at a ratio of 1.64 space per apartment. Parking for the houses meets the council's parking standards and is provided in parking courts, on plot, in front of the houses and in carports. Show some of the elevations of the scheme. This is actually a section that shows the transition of the site as levels change. At the rear of the site level is higher and it slopes downwards towards Largest Lane.
Is it possible to make that bigger,
Yes,
please?
shall try.
That's
So
great, thank you.
this shows Building A and the houses next to it, and the grey building is the existing properties in Robinsgate. As you can see, the ground level is lower there and increases towards the building, and then from here are the apartments in Mount Lane. Sorry, this is a little clunky, I'm afraid, the change in the pictures.
Is it possible for you to bring your microphone a bit closer
Yes,
to
of
you?
course. Sorry, yes.
That's right. They're not very clever.
And this is Building B. This is a 3.5 storey apartment building, and the half storey refers to the fact that the top floor is set back. And these are some of the 3-storey houses within the site. move on and this presentation may catch up with me. Accessible units to meet policy LP38 of the local plan have been agreed with the applicant, with a condition included requiring a scheme of accessible units to be submitted for approval. Affordable housing to meet policy LP16 requirements of 35% of units will be provided, with the size of the units to be secured through the Section 106 agreement to ensure that it meets the housing requirement needs at the time. A climate change assessment has been submitted and conditions will secure water usage and energy demand. Biodiversity net gain of well in excess of 10%, in fact almost reaching 200%, will be achieved. A supplementary report has been prepared and the recommendation is set out in the main report, and which is, following the completion of a Section 106 agreement pursuant to the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 to secure planning obligations relating to the following: a requirement to enter into a Section 278 and 38 agreement with a highway authority to include works to Larges Lane to form the site access, lighting improvements and parking lay-by, and adoption of the internal access road, a car club, affordable housing, community facility contribution, contribution towards off-site open space of public value, SUD specification and management and maintenance strategy, SPA mitigation, funding for traffic regulation orders, on-site biodiversity net gain management obligations and monitoring fee, that the Assistant Director Planning be recommended to approve the application subject to following conditions amended, added to or deleted as the Assistant Director of Planning considers necessary. I think the presentation has caught up slightly. These are some of the elevations showing the 2- and 3-storey houses. And hopefully there will be some photos of the site and the surrounding area. This is the existing access from Larges Lane, which serves the cricket club. At the moment, the access is split between the football and the cricket club, and the access will also serve the cricket club in the future. These may well come in time, perhaps during questions. If that was all out in the presentation, Chair. Apologies for the technical hitches.
Thank you. We're getting a changeover of all the photos here, but they're not
on the screen.
Up there. I hope they don't all flash in one. We found the site visit that we did on Saturday very useful, and it showed us a lot about the different levels in the site. But I'm sure we have multiple questions. But may I start with one about secure cycle parking, please?
I'm presuming by that, Chair, you want to know where it is or
Yes,
what is provided.
Yeah.
I may ask my colleague, the case officer, to confirm. I believe there is conditions around cycle parking, but the cycle parking for the flats is contained within the structure of the building itself and within the main fabric of, so that's in terms of it's covered and it's secure in that regard. And for the dwelling houses, there will be stores in the gardens, and details of which will be secured, so which the cycles can be stored. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Members, questions? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I note the site allocation in the local plan is for 102 dwellings, and the previous scheme that was recommended for approval, I think, was slightly higher than this density, but this scheme is a fair step lower at 88. I'm just wondering if the officers might be able to speak to the impact of that on meeting our housing allocation targets.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, correct. The allocation is for 102 units, and this reduction is a result of the change in format of housing over apartments. So yes, there is 20 units less than the allocation, but it is considered that, notwithstanding the reduction in units, which obviously over the life of the local plan with windfall sites, it would hope that they would be met, it is considered that the mix of housing and apartments is appropriate within the area, notwithstanding that.
Thank you. Did you have a supplementary? No? Anyone else? Oh, Councillor Hayes.
As always, Madam Chairwoman, I was asked about waste, because at the end of the day, even though this is a reduced number, it's the design element of it. And I would ask the highways, they have considered, and I'm sure they have, where the parking and the movement of such to allow the vehicles of the housing has taken into place. Please.
Through you, Chair, I'll answer the point specifically about the vehicle access. Yes, the case officer referred to relevant Section 106 clauses to have Section 278 and 38 agreements entered into, as well as a TRO to secure the main access road. Unfortunately, due to the presentation, it's not on the screen at present, but it may catch up. But the initial main road and turning head within the site are going to be sought for adoption and be protected with double yellow lines to secure the fact that the road will be open and easy to access for deliveries, including refuse collection.
Just as a supplementary, as you can appreciate, because if with parking, the vehicles, that's why I was asking about the turn-in, because it is important that we cover it, that we are able to get the vehicles in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Was Councillor Collins, was it?
Thank you. I'm very interested in the car club parking spaces. I'd just like confirmation that this car club scheme is already in existence.
Do you have any information?
I'll try to answer that one through you, Chair. Obviously on this site, as it isn't developed yet, it's not in existence on this site at present, but we do have and have consented other schemes in and around the town centre with car clubs, and I believe the site behind us in this building today, the Grand Exchange, as you may know it now, if you've seen the large building behind our offices here, that has a car club in it, and believe it is in existence. The cars are parked there for residents to join the club and to use the cars. So they are, becoming more popular, and they are these sort of the car clubs in these town centre type locations are used.
Thank you. That's encouraging. Councillor Collins.
Can I just ask a supplementary? Does that mean that each site that has a car club scheme it's a separate scheme? There's not just one big scheme for Bracknell?
Through you, Chair, there isn't a scheme that we operate. It is a commercial entity in terms of companies that choose to run car clubs. The ones I'm aware of are Enterprise, the car rental do operate one, and they have one on their own rental site in Western Road in Bracknell, and I believe they operate the one behind. So it's a commercial operation that the person developing the site or the developer themselves or whoever chooses to build out the site would require to set that contractual obligation up and ensure that it's run.
Okay, thank you.
No, Councillor.
Through your chair, page number 30, 9.61, 9.62 and 9.63 sections talk about affordable housing. Can the officer clarify the breakdown of numbers in terms of flats and houses with regards to affordable housing in totality of 88?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. The scheme and the mix of numbers will be agreed through the 106 negotiations. The agreement is on the 35% of affordable housing, and then through that our our housing officer will work on the required mix at that time. So at the moment, the requirements are for larger family houses, but obviously that does change over time. So we would expect some flexibility until the 106 agreement is signed, obviously.
Thank you. What about accessibility? Could you comment on that, please?
Yes, there is agreement that accessible units will be provided, and there is a condition that requires a scheme for accessible units to be agreed before construction starts. So all new properties are expected to be accessible for the general level, but then the specialised wheelchair accessible units, which is 5%, will be secured by the condition that we will then have the identified units, depending on what the demand is at the time for particular houses or apartments, to be wheelchair accessible.
Thank you. Councillor Smith again.
Thank you, Chair. Returning to the car club spaces, I just want to check if I'd understood correctly from the officer's report that the increased ratio that's afforded by the car club spaces, is that integral for achieving the parking standards, or do we achieve, you know, if they weren't car club spaces, do we still have enough spaces to achieve the parking standards?
Through you, Chair, in terms of the flatted element, and considering it in light of the previous scheme on this site, which also did have a car club, the car club, as set out in the report, sets out that through the research evidence that each space provides the equivalent of 9 spaces on research of how turnover of spaces and how they're used. In terms of the level of parking for the flatted element, itself on the number that you have there does not comply with the fully for the parking standard for outside of the town centre. Technically, this site is on the edge of the town centre parking standards, and so work was done on with the previous application that is still applicable on looking at similar sites in similar locations around the vicinity of the town that offer a similar setup in terms of flats with mixtures of 1 and 2 bed flats. And it was that evidence that was used to support, and the parking standards allows for that evidence to be provided to support a different standard. And in this regard, the level of parking that this proposal provides is slightly greater. With the car club included, it gets close to or the same as the parking standard element that we required, but it is an equivalent parking ratio, not an exact number. I hope that answers it.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, this is a supplementary to, notwithstanding the points the officers just made, which were very clear. I'm just wondering, in terms of long-term operation of the site, what security we have that those car club spaces will be occupied and available as intended long-term. What are there conditions or anything in the legal agreements that will ensure that that remains in place?
Through you, Chair, my understanding is it's an obligation within the Section 106 requirement for the site, and in that regard, I would see it being in perpetuity within the site, the provision of such facility.
Thank you. I have one more thing, because there was quite a lot of concern about the levels of the land and the height of the buildings and so on. And I did note that the changes to the buildings were made to sort of mitigate the bulk of them. I wonder if you could expand on that, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If the site plan would come up. So it's right, yes. The higher levels of the site are the rear of the site where the apartment buildings will be located. And of course, the apartments behind them are on slightly higher ground as well. But yes, the apartment buildings have been reorientated in this application over the last one so that the side elevations are towards the Mount Pleasant apartments, whereas in the previous application, the length, part of the length of the boundary was actually one of the apartment buildings. So there is a reduction, if you like, in the bulk of built form towards the apartments behind the site.
I think the roofs are sort of less bulk. Well, they're not there, are they? I don't know. How is that organised?
Well, of course, Chair, as I said, the 3.5 and 4.5 storey units, which reflects the fact that the top floor is set into the buildings and flatter roofs, so that does reduce the bulk of the top of the buildings, yes.
Thank you, because there were concerns from Barnum Close and so on over there. They're quite distance away. I'm sorry, I should be doing a question, not. Okay. Do you want to expound a bit further there?
It comes on and then doesn't move on very quickly. But yes, as it's shown there on building A, the tallest building, the roof is set inwards at the top, so that does reduce the bulk of that building, yes.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, members? No? So the recommendation is on page 32, as amended by page 2 of the supplementary report. Amended condition. Yes, some revisions to text and so on. Thank you. Now, do we have anyone who would like to comment? Oh, I need a seconder first, sorry.
I'll second.
Thank you very
Chair.
much. Yeah. Any speakers, please? No comments? Shall we proceed to the vote then? All those in favour of this application, the recommendation?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Good. So the next item on page 43. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chair. Katie Andrews presenting. I'm just trying to share my screen. I'll start my presentation now. The application site relates to 63 Church Road, which was previously the site of the Mango Tree restaurant, and the application is for a Section 73 application to provide 8 residential flats with ancillary car parking and landscaping. The applicants have applied to vary Condition 2 to allow the consideration of amendments to the original application. A Section 73 application is made under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 to vary or remove conditions associated with a planning permission. Planning permission cannot be granted under Section 73 to extend the time limit within which the development must be started and cannot be used to change the description of the development. Section 73 applications can secure material changes as long as they do not lead to any conflict or inconsistency with the operative part, i.e. the description of development of the original planning permission. The development subject to this Section 73 application does not alter the description of development of the parent planning permission, and the proposal remains as providing 8 residential flats. The amendments to the application are, within the second floor, changing the flat sizes from 2 2-beds to 1 1-bed and 1 3-bed, the insertion of 2 additional dormer windows in the roof and changes to the window positions, and the use of reclaimed bricks in the development rather than bricks previously retained from the demolition of the original building. Apologies, my plans aren't now showing on the screen. The site plan edged red on the screen shows the site of the previous mango tree. The site is currently now vacant, but was previously occupied by the Mango Tree restaurant on the ground floor and residential above. The site falls within the Crowthorne Conservation Area and is bordered by 59 Church Street to the west here and 67 Church Street here, with further residential properties to the rear. I'll just describe the site layout as it's not actually showing at the moment. The site layout as proposed is identical to the approved application and no amendments have been proposed for it. The layout shows a vehicular access and parking for 17 cars with 2 disabled spaces and an area of amenity space. The relationship with the trees and hedging on the site was previously approved and is not proposed to change under this application. The elevations proposed are a 2.5-storey building with a pitched roof over and chimneys. This is not altered from the parent approved application. The front elevation is largely proposed as approved, with the window locations minorly altered. The side elevations show 1 additional dormer window on the roof and the new locations, whereas previously only 2 dormer windows were proposed. This follows on the other side elevation as well, with the rear elevation altered slightly with new window positions. The floor plans for the proposal show 3 flats at the ground floor of 2 beds, 3 further flats at the first floor of 2 beds, which is as approved. Then moving to the second floor, it now shows a 3-bed unit and 1-bed unit, whereas previously approved was 2 2-bed units. Okay. On the screen now is the previously approved scheme, which is identical apart from the changes on the roof to the parent approved consent. And then I would have shown you the actual approved elevations. I'll move on to the actual discussion and then if the plans come up, I'll show them. The application site has an extensive planning history and this Section 73 application follows the approved extant scheme for the same level of development for 8 flats. The only changes to the approved scheme are the additional dormers on the roof, window changes and the use of reclaimed bricks rather than the bricks previously used at the site. The site is located within the Crowthorne Conservation Area, where local authorities are required to pay special attention to the desirability of preserving or enhancing a conservation area when deciding planning applications. As considered under the parent consent, whilst the proposed development would result in some harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area, as it cannot be said to preserve or enhance the conservation area, due to the previous demolition of a period building in the conservation area, this test is only desirable. Leaving the site empty would leave a large hole in the conservation area. Reclaimed bricks would help to reduce the building's impact overall, and with the proposed amendments, its impact is considered to be neutral when considering the previous demolition and gap created. The proposal provides an amenity space on site in line with the approved consent and protects existing vegetation and the hedge on the site as previously approved. The impact on neighbouring amenity neighbouring dwellings is considered to be acceptable, subject to conditions to secure obscure glazing and high-level openings looking towards number 67 Church Road and beyond at the properties at 1 to 5 Thornley Place. 17 parking spaces have been provided as approved, which means that the development now meets the parking standards, whereas previously this was 1 space below. It is, however, proposed to amend Condition 8 to secure the 2 visitor parking spaces, as 1 is only noted. The amendments proposed by this Section 73 would not significantly harm the amenity of the neighbouring dwellings and would maintain a neutral effect on the conservation area and amenity of the surrounding area. The changes would not result in additional impacts to highway safety, trees, biodiversity or drainage. The Section 73 is recommended for approval, subject to a deed of variation and conditions as set out on page 54 of the report. And members are also to note the additional condition noted on the supplementary report and an amendment proposed to Condition 8 to secure 2 visitor parking spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have questions, please? Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, Officer, for the report. Visitor car parking spaces, can they be shown, or are they just sort of aspirational visitors car parking spaces? Because what we don't want is any overspill on the neighbouring, for the simple reason there cannot be any overspill because there are yellow lines right outside this building, and then there's an unadopted road to the east of this building, and what we don't want is the local residents being disadvantaged by non-adherence to our parking spaces, our parking standards.
Would the officer like to? Oh, yes.
Andy Wells, Highways. The visitor parking spaces are not specifically shown on the block plan. However, Condition 8 requires the location and details of signing of those spaces to be submitted and approved by the local planning authority before occupation of the building.
Thank you. Do you have supplementary? Oh, would you like?
My apologies, Councillor. I will try and get closer to the microphone. Condition 8 requires the location and the details of signing for the visitor spaces to be submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority before first occupation of the building.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Can I ask if those will be indicated as visitor parking, so not in general use?
That condition requires the location and the signing details to be submitted at a later point. So they're not indicated on the block plan that accompanies this application, but they are required to be, the details of where they are and their signing are required to be submitted before the building can be occupied.
Thank you very much.
Supplementary, please.
Yes.
Chair, through you. Thanks very much for that. Now, for those people that came to the site visit on Saturday, will see the camera of the land is just like this. If anybody can see it, it's like that. So how safe would any of those car parking areas be, especially the disabled?
Through you, Chair, the proposed car parking layout is unchanged from that previously approved under the parent permission. The Section 73 application does not propose to vary the car parking layout.
Apologies. Chair, I'm sorry, is that the extent of 5
Yes,
we're talking about?
The extant permission that is proposed to be varied under this Section 73 application has the same car parking layout as is proposed for this Section 73. The only amendment is internal to the building in terms of replacement of 2 two-bedroom flats with 1 three-bedroom flat and 1 one-bedroom flat.
Councillor Hayes.
As always, the variation of the numbers that we're showing here with regards to waste again, because it is something that I have always said we should be careful with, the design element. Is that in the amenity area still? And if so, is it appropriate and of the conditions that will see us collecting correctly, if we are collecting? Because it could be privately collected, and the problem, we have no condition on that, do we? Yeah,
Through you, Chair. There is a condition 23 requires a on-site refuse storage facility to be submitted. However, if I could show you the plans, there is a collection point for the waste to be collected on collection day leading on the access, and this was previously approved under the extant parent permission.
Just a supplementary, yeah. So a supplementary, it may have been in the past one, but the conditions as such, will it guarantee that we are the collection people?
Is that relevant?
Yes, it is. If we're not the collection people, they could do doing anything they like. Excuse the expression.
We do have rubbish area indicated there, so whoever collects will have to use that. Any other questions? Councillor O'Regan.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Page 5503 says shall use reclaimed bricks. So just a question of clarification. That's the bricks that were used on the original restaurant. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair. No, unfortunately, the site has been sold since the original building was demolished. So I'm afraid I'm not sure where the original bricks went. However, there is a requirement now with the condition required in the submission of materials to use reclaimed bricks. So they will need to find some bricks that match what has previously been demolished. And the condition also requires further details of mortar and pointing, etc. So it's a very detailed condition, and will need to come back to us for approval.
Supplementary.
So in the original application, they were supposed to use the bricks from the demolished restaurant, but they've gone missing. Is that right?
And that's through you, Chair. That's correct. Yes, I'm afraid I don't know where the bricks are.
So under our planning policy, do we have any? I don't know, is that a breaking of their application? I don't know. I'm just a bit puzzled as to why the bricks have gone missing and what we can do, what we could have done to stop that.
That's an enforcement thing,
Yes.
and the site has been sold on, I think, hasn't it? So,
through you, Chair.
yes, please.
Yes, I think the site has been sold on, and the original bricks are no longer available. I think the point is this is a Section 73 application, and one of the variations they're seeking are to use reclaimed bricks, but not those original to the site. And so there isn't a breach as such, because they're seeking to remedy the situation through this Section 73 application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Collins.
I'm really sorry. I would like to return to the visitor car spaces or space. I thought I heard somebody say that there were going to be 2, but the condition says 1. Could somebody just confirm to me that which it is?
Through you, Chair. Yes, the wording of the condition on the committee report was noted as incorrect just before the committee started, and the condition wording will be for 2 visitor spaces.
Thank you.
Well spotted. If there's no other questions, the recommendation is on page 54, and I move that this recommendation with the amended condition, additional condition and amended informative to include that new condition, I move that be accepted. Do I have a seconder, please?
I can second for you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have any comments? Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. Could you bear with me, please? This is a proposal of this area. You've got to think about it. This is a conservation area. And the proposal of this, let's call it, it was the former mango tree. It is now just an absolute mess there. And really we should be looking at the extent of 5, which I guess we'll have to cope with. But due to the bulk and the mass and the scale of this, it would result in development which would not preserve or enhance the character of the appearance of the Crowthorne Conservation Area, and layout would result in an unsatisfactory form of development, detrimental to the character and amenities of the area, and contrary to Crowthorne Neighbourhood Plan Policy CR4. And the design shows the car parking and cycle spaces along the waste bin storage is very close to the proximity to the green path hedge line. This layout would compromise the depth of the hedge and detract from the rural nature of its lane. It's not been demonstrated that the proposed development would not have an adverse impact on trees and the hedgerow on the boundaries of the site, which would make a significant contribution to the conservation area and biodiversity. The topography, as everybody saw on Saturday, of the site is such that the proposed car parking spaces would be sideways onto the slope. And it's not been demonstrated that the proposed development would incorporate sustainable drainage system for the management of surface water runoff. And it's not been shown that the use of SUDs would be inappropriate for the development. And there are no plans submitted on how the boundaries are going to be secured. The layout of the development is substandard, including placing the access road too tight to the proposed building. The site layout does not demonstrate that safe and suitable access to the site can be achieved for the users. And it does not give priority first to pedestrian and cycle movements, does not create places that are safe, secure and attractive, which minimise the scope for conflict between pedestrians, cycles and vehicles, and does not allow for the efficient delivery of goods and access by service and emergency vehicles. The development intends the 8 residential flats. We're saying that there is a possibility of 2 visitor car parking spaces. We've still got to consider the original brickwork. I'm sorry, I'm just getting sort of slightly passionate about these brickworks. They were the original bricks that we built in Crowthorne many years in our brickworks, and they've disappeared. And under the planning report 17-01273 full, under that permission, the extent of 5 flats, the building was to be taken down brick by brick, with the bricks cleaned, reused for the construction of the new building. And again, understood that the planning committee report under 17-01273 full, that the bricks have been cleaned in accordance with that permission and are being stored on site. So, under condition 3, the following should be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority before the relevant part of the work is begun. And a sample panel of all facing materials, including previously retained brick to be used, and a sample panel of brickwork which demonstrates the brick type, colour, texture, face bond, mortar mix and pointing to be erected on site and maintained there for the course of the construction. We did ask for enforcement on a number of occasions to go to have a look at this site, and it's been totally ignored, Chair, totally ignored, and we've got to this point. I really can't support this because I think the whole thing has been ignored, and hoping that we'd go away, and we haven't. We are still here. This is our conservation area. Our residents are really angry that what used to be is not and cannot be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie Boyle. I mean, it is so disappointing what a mess they've made of it. But unfortunately, we have an extant permission so we need to consider, I'm sorry, I've got to, we have an extant permission that's going to go ahead, albeit with that they've got to find some new bricks, well, not new bricks, reclaimed bricks. So we have to make the best of what we have before us, and the application before us is specific to the section called Section 73 changes, and we have to decide on those. I'm afraid we can't do other than that. Anything else about chasing the previous owner for the bricks or anything like that is another matter, and is down to enforcement, not the planning committee, planning section. Shall we have another speaker? Councillor Barnard, sorry.
Thank you very much. This is a really difficult one because I absolutely take on board that there's an extant permission. But one of the things that struck me, I couldn't come on the official site visit, but I went there around that, was the choice of those reclaimed bricks is going to be really, really important in terms of how it works there. And I guess the concern I have in the back of my mind is that until such time as that brick stock sample has been provided, it will be difficult, nigh on impossible, to know how well that will work in the context of the site. It's really quite interesting because Councillor Mackenzie Boyle, makes a good point that there are conservation areas where there's kind of stuff of all different eras, different types, and things like that. But actually, there's almost, I think, quite uniformity to a lot of what's there, and getting something to fit and work in that context is going to be important. And I think the other thing, I know there's an extant permission there, we're just looking at the small changes, but when you actually go down there, it does strike that the original permission, I think with the access and things like that, was very challenging to begin with. So I guess what I'm really asking for is that I'm quite uncomfortable about this, in as much until I really get a sense for what the materials are going to be used to look like. It was very straightforward at the previous application because there was this very magnanimous and very key gesture, wasn't there? You know, let's reuse the existing bricks and things like that, which have conveniently gone missing in the time. I use that in brackets because I couldn't possibly know in any more detail whether they've disappeared or not. I worry that we then get another application back that says, well, actually, we can't find, heritage reclaimed bricks that will do this. So actually, we need to think again. So although it's a minor detail, I remember when this was discussed before, that reuse of the existing bricks, particularly to the front, to create that uniformity, was really key in the reassurance and the decision making. So although one could argue it's only a minor change, as far as I'm concerned, it really is a very significant change to what's proposed, because it's no longer based on the principles of the previous application. So I'd be interested in your summing up, if you could sort of try and give a measure of reassurance on this, which I know will be quite difficult, because actually, for me then, it's substantively a very different application. And as someone who's learning a lot about heritage properties and things like that, this is unfortunately one way of circumventing something which I think is really quite important to the residents. And I think Councillor Mackenzie Boyle has made the point very clear on that. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Chair, through you, if I could just draw members' attention, as I think the case officer did, to the wording of condition 3. So it talks about the requirement for a sample panel of all the facing materials to be provided and to be erected on site and maintained there during the course of construction. And I would hope that that's obviously something that not only officers could go and visit, but also members could prior to the discharge of that condition. And hopefully that would provide sufficient reassurance that the materials being proposed were an appropriate match to those in the immediate vicinity.
I welcome the open dialogue. I know we're in debate. We can beg the indulgence. Presumably that couldn't form part of bringing this back to the committee again to check on that once that's been done before final approval. So, sorry, I think it's important. I'm quite happy to hear your feeling on that, because I think that might actually at least alleviate some concern.
Would you want to?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, certainly that is an application that if you wanted to view the conditions application before it was discharged, there'd be no objection to it being brought back to the Planning Committee.
Bingo.
Is it Councillor Penfold first? Oh, Councillor Smith first?
I think I had one. Okay. Fight you for it. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle referred to the drainage. That was something I independently visited, and that struck me on that side. Can we have assurance that there is a plan that that drainage doesn't just spill out into Church Road, etc.? Is there?
Yes. Well, we have really good drainage conditions.
That's what I wasn't. I'm just checking because I probably haven't seen the small print.
Technical assurance, please.
Yes, through you, Chair. So conditions number 16 to 19 on the agenda all refer to drainage. As you'll note from the wording of condition 16, that actually requires full details of the drainage system to be submitted and approved by the local planning authority, but it is to be based on approved drawings which have already been submitted. So basically what has happened is drainage information has been submitted, it's been assessed by the drainage officer and considered to provide an appropriate drainage solution for the site, and yet we still require full details of exactly how that will be designed. Condition 17 relates to the details of the management and the maintenance of it. Condition 18 relates to the completion of the drainage works, and then finally condition 19 requires a verification report in order to make sure that the approved drainage works have satisfactorily been completed on site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'll just commend Councillor Mackenzie Boyle. I think there's a very impassioned defence of her ward and the things that are important to her residents. I think she made some incredibly valuable points. It is, I think, largely unfortunate that this is a Section 73 and not the original application that we're hearing tonight, which obviously many of the points she raised are not relevant to the changes in the Section 73, which is what we have to decide. So it's frustrating that it's an extant approval, but it's that's the situation we're in. So on those, we obviously can only really consider the changes which are being made as part of the Section 73. The one point I did want to come back to that several of my colleagues have mentioned is this issue with the bricks. It does frustrate me that we had a very clear condition originally on reusing the bricks. And I don't know whether it's by intent or by error that works have been done and those bricks are being removed, but that is quite concerning. That was a very clear condition that's not ultimately being complied with there. I hope we have our new Assistant Director planning with us today. I hope that that's something we are looking at on an enforcement basis as to whether somebody's done anything potentially illegal or otherwise there, that there should potentially might be some enforcement opportunity on. However, the case being what it is, the bricks are not there. We don't know where they are. And as was mentioned, I understand the site's changed ownership as well. I think that the test ultimately is if we were to refuse that change, is that a reasonable thing to do, which unfortunately, I'm not sure we could argue it is if we don't actually know where these bricks are. So on that basis, my feeling is that I would have to support this, but I am frustrated about that situation, and I hope we can enforce it, and we can, on similar developments in the future, avoid such situations arising.
That might be a little difficult. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that understanding. So I just got an idea how we can circumvent all of this. We're going to have to come back here to talk about the bricks. It might be useful if the applicant forgot 8 and went back to the extent of 5, and then he would have possibly not had to get too many bricks.
Yes, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have let you speak twice.
Can I move an amendment, Chair? Because I think, given the very helpful observation we had about the conditions, can I beg the indulgence that we might come up with an amendment that says that when it comes to the condition that we put after this, that says that condition, about the bricks and the panel be, dealt with appropriately by this committee? Because I think that's actually about the only measure of reassurance that we can get on this. And I think that would actually just demonstrate our concern as to how this looks and feels. I think it was suggested that would be possible that we could bring the conditions back. And I would look to some appropriate wording that doesn't negate the recommendation we have, but one that we could bring in that actually just brings that back as a very, very specific point, because that, seems to be the one thing that we can control in this. So let's use our authority as a planning committee and make sure that that happens and happens properly. I'll be guided by you, Chair, on that. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. I don't think there's a requirement to amend the wording of the condition. I think that's more a procedural matter, but we could certainly look to put an informative on the decision notice, indicating members' concern about the nature of the. We can look at some wording of an informative, yes, to that effect. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Regan, please.
Yes, I wanted to contribute on the same point. I've read 03A. It just requires them to use reclaimed bricks. There's nothing about colour matching the conservation area, so I think it's not sufficiently clear. I think the sentiment of the councillors is that they want the bricks to fit in with the conservation area, and there needs to be some kind of inspection or a term saying that the colour texture should be compatible with the previous bricks or the conservation area. I'm struggling for the words, but I think that's what we're looking for.
Our understanding at the site visit was that the developer would have to bring the bricks back for matching and to make sure they were appropriate. Could you comment?
Through you, Chair. Yes, I mean, the condition is currently worded to make sure that there is the inspection element in that prior to the discharge of that condition. But again, I think that that's a point that could be made in the informative, that that's a particular concern of members.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else wish to speak? No, not question. And no repeats. Okay, so with the additional amendment, I would like informative, introduction of informative, and the additional condition, and does that need to be added to that as well?
That's just an amended informative, so just
Yeah.
to pick up this final condition.
Will the new one be in there as well?
I'll amend that, yes.
Yeah. So looking at the supplementary report, we have the additional condition, and that being listed in the amended informative, and we'll need to add the one about the bricks as well when that's complete. So may I propose that we accept this recommendation as amended by the supplementary report? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I already did propose and get it second, didn't I? Could I say in all those in favour? That's everybody as well.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Lovely. Okay, thank you very much for that. So, our last this evening on, oh gosh, which page do we start on? Oh, there it is. moving, oh no, I'm looking at the wrong one now. The Manhattan House on Crowthorne High Street. Officer Shelley.
Okay, good evening. Shay Clark speaking. I'm the case officer. Just going to share my screen. Okay, and I'm going to start my presentation and then hopefully it will come up on the above screen.
Excuse me.
Oh.
Can we have a bit of hush for the officer, please, and listen?
So this is an application for prior approval under Class MA of Part 3, Schedule 2 of the Town and Country General Permitted Development Order 2015. Under Class MA, a change of use of a building and any land within its curtilage from a use falling within Class E, which includes offices, to Class C3 residential, is permitted development subject to meeting a number of criteria set out in the class. These are all considered within the officer's report. Just going to do this. A condition of Class MA is that before beginning development, the developer must apply to the local planning authority with regards to whether the dwellings would have adequate natural light, any noise concerns from neighbouring commercial uses, any issues of contamination or of flooding, and any highway implications. This application therefore considers these issues. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I think you can see on your screens and hopefully it will come up above. So the development involves the conversion of offices on the first and second floor of Manhattan House from offices to provide 6 one-bedroom flats. And above you can see Manhattan House and the first and the second floors. So here we can see the front of the building as seen from the high street. And the rear of the building. Again, you should be able to see it on your screen. Okay. The proposed floor layouts of the first and second floors are shown. Measurements have been provided showing the dimensions of the windows. So here you can see the dimensions of the windows. And again with the next floor here. So all habitable rooms have external windows which are considered to provide adequate natural light. Elevational drawings show the building and existing fenestration with the retail units below. The Environmental Health Officer has not objected due to any noise concerns from neighbouring commercial uses or contamination issues. The application is for the conversion of the first and second floor of the building. As such, there are also no concerns with regards to the risk of flooding. Okay. Again, we have the elevation to the rear. And here. Okay, I'm just going to wait to see if this plan comes up on the above screen. It's getting there. Let's just wait. I'm just going to do it a little bit more. Get that right. Okay, it has come up. Okay. So a site location plan, a red outline, and revised parking layout shows the extent of land ownership and rights of way. this includes access into the site from the high street and land within the adjacent car park and car park to the rear of Manhattan House, with Manhattan House being here. During the course of the application, amended plans were requested to ensure that proposed parking spaces to the northwest of Manhattan House in the adjacent car park were made bigger to meet the council's parking standards, as at present these spaces are substandard in size. This has provided a betterment of the existing situation. So 6 spaces are provided in the adjacent car park to the northwest of Manhattan House, which is within the applicant's ownership, with this ownership clearly marked out on site at the moment. I will show you some photographs afterwards. 1 visitor space, as well as 2 spaces for the existing retail units on the ground floor, will be within the car park to the rear of Manhattan House. So we have 6 parking spaces for the flats plus 1 visitor space and 2 parking spaces for the retail units on the ground floor. Areas for refuse and cycle storage are also provided. Here we have refuse storage where you have the existing office refuse storage and cycle storage above here and here. So parking has been provided in accordance with the council's parking standards for both the new residential units at Manhattan House, following the conversion of existing offices on the 1st and 2nd floor, and the retail units on the ground floor of the building. The proposal also maintains the level of car parking allocated for adjacent uses. The Highway Authority have not objected to the proposal on the grounds that there are any highway considerations that would merit the refusal of the application. As the application meets all other criteria under Class MA of the GDPO, it is considered that prior approval should be granted. Okay, I do have some further photographs. Here, again, you can see that swept paths have been provided, showing that there is manoeuvrability for the 6 parking spaces in the northwest, to the northwest of the site.
Yes, could we pause till we catch that?
Yes,
up?
okay.
I think
Yes.
that's quite
So it should,
important.
yes, it should come up. So this, yeah, that's working. Right, let's just wait. So as you can see, we also requested swept paths. They have provided those. Yeah, it should, hopefully it will come up. Let's wait for those. Maybe if I press this one, it will then come back on. No? Shall we wait further?
No, I think we'll have to move on and
No?
see if we can catch it.
Okay.
Do you have a suggestion to make?
I have a question.
We're not quite in questions yet.
Oh, because well, I thought that sort of the suspense of the photographs was.
No, I mean, certainly here again on your screen, we should have the photographs.
Shall we take questions, and if they come up, stop?
Okay, okay, we can do that.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Barnard.
So I was looking at the plans, and I was interested to see that on 2 of the kitchens there were obscured glass windows. First of all, that just seems really quite odd. I mean, I could understand if it was a bathroom or something like that, but to have obscured glass. And secondly, if it's in a kitchen area, surely there would be a need for that window to open, which would somewhat negate the fact that it was obscured glass, because if it wasn't an opening window, that doesn't seem to chime particularly well with the kitchen area. So if that sounds overly domestic, sorry, but it struck me as being very odd that you actually had what I would consider to be a habitable much-used space with obscure glass windows, because there was an issue at another development where there was a similar situation where actually an angle window was provided, which actually meant that there was still a nice clear glass, but it was sort of angled away from the the other buildings. So at least if you were standing in the kitchen, you could look out, because it seems to me to be a little, I don't know, it did seem to be a bit...
This is a question.
There is a question in there somewhere, sorry, Chair.
Yes. So why do you have the obscure glazing?
It doesn't seem to be a good design, really acceptable under many conditions.
Stop, we have photos. Oh.
I
the one we
think
want.
no, it's not. Maybe not the one I wanted.
Oh,
sorry.
oh. Sorry.
That's yes, but now it's not showing it. If I can, the kitchen windows are obscure glaze because the Manhattan House, if you can have a look at the committee report, the Manhattan House actually you have Manhattan House, and then you have an L-shaped block behind Manhattan House. Or sorry, you have a block behind Manhattan House, which makes Manhattan House and Manhattan Lofts appear L-shaped. But obviously the rear projection, which are the 14 residential units known as Manhattan Lofts, because of obviously the L shape, you have windows along the frontage of Manhattan Lofts, and here it's just to protect the privacy. So the kitchen windows are obscure glass to protect the privacy of the intended occupiers of the new flats in Manhattan House, protect their privacy from the occupiers of Manhattan Lofts and vice versa.
Thank you. Councillor Ballard.
So first of all, could we confirm, are those opening windows? And secondly, presumably it wasn't a problem when it was an office space, so people could have actually worked there 24/7 and peered out of that window any time they wanted. And now we're actually turning it into a kitchen where hopefully you don't spend your entire life. It doesn't seem right to me in the context of that, and I think
A bit different if it's people living there, isn't it?
yeah,
Day and
but
night.
is it an
Shall
opening
we-
window? That's the point, because
shall
then
we
that
ask-
completely
shall we
negates
ask
it.
the
Yeah.
officer?
It's not an opening window. It's not my understanding it's an opening window. And yes, I would agree with you. It's obviously different if it's a residential use. But I'm just going to gain. I don't think I'm just having a look here.
I mean, does this restrict light? I don't think it does it?
No, certainly. I mean, obviously, you've got the rooms, the two rooms leading into the living room, and obviously the light there.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? Councillor Reagan.
Through you, Chair. Crowthorne Parish Council make some observations about parking, and there's quite a lot in the report about parking. Would you help us just by summarising the parking solution versus the objection, please?
Okay. You want to do that?
Yeah, I can do.
Okay.
Through you, Chair. So the proposal requires 6 parking spaces for residents, 1 per each 1-bedroom flat, plus 1 visitor space to be provided. The existing ground floor retail uses also have a requirement for the 2 retail parking spaces. At present, those 2 retail parking spaces are in the southern corner within the red line closest to the building 140. You can see one of them is annotated R for retail on that plan, and the reason that the neighbouring space close to the building is not annotated R is because that has air conditioning plant within it that makes it unusable for parking, and therefore the replacement retail space along with the visitor space are provided to the north of that parking aisle, and those 2 spaces were noted as for the commercial uses on the ground floor in the previous permission for Manhattan Lofts. in the Highway Officer's report, my report.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, so may I move the recommendation that's on page 71 of the report as amended by page 3 of the supplementary report? Well, I think it's 2 and 3, isn't it? Does anybody wish to speak? Oh, I've got to have a second. Yes,
I will second that, so we
Thank you
can
very
move to debate.
much. Yep. Speakers. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, yes, Crowthorne Parish Council has spent a lot of time with this application. It's been tricky from day one. And the applicant actually has listened and has given those parking spaces. Crowthorne Parish Council knows that we need housing, and those extra flats will provide that. However, what Crowthorne Parish Council doesn't like is the overspill of any car parking, because what we don't want is residential parking taking up any spaces that should be for our businesses and our high street. But I am convinced by conversations with the officer that the amended parking will contribute to me saying I will now support this.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak? Yeah. Well, I can only say that I was worried about the parking. It's quite a tricky situation. I'm pleased about the resizing of the spaces and the fact that they will be signed as being allocated to those flats. So yeah, my worry was eased by that too. So all in all, I think I propose that we agree this recommendation as amended by the supplementary. All those in favour? Gracious.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. That is the end of this evening's meeting. Could you just stay quiet while the officer switches us offline, please?